Algerian President Abdelaziz Bouteflika says he will not serve a full term if elected again in April, as protests against his intention to run for another term rage on. Women engineers reach for the heights at an Air Tanzania workshop in Dar es Salaam. And Addis Ababa residents sweat it out together as lifestyle disease rates rise. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin in North Africa, where Algerians continue their protests against long-term President Abdelaziz Bouteflika's plan to seek re-election. President Bouteflika said Sunday that he would not serve a full term if elected again in April. Bouteflika's campaign manager, Abdelghani Zailani, said the president would call for new elections within a year if he won a fifth term in televised remarks after he submitted the 82-year-old president's papers to confirm his bid for April's elections.
A
new set of presidential elections will take place, founded on the agenda produced by the National Symposium. I promise not to run for office in those presidential elections. Those elections are meant to, among other things, guarantee the transition of power under peaceful conditions and in an atmosphere of freedom and transparency. The National Symposium will determine the date of the preceding elections.
Well, anti-government protests had continued in Algeria Sunday as Bouteflika faced a midnight deadline to formally declare his candidacy for a fifth term as president. Rallies in the streets of cities across Algeria began roughly 10 days ago when Bouteflika announced his intention to run for another term as president. The protests have been largely peaceful, but on Friday there were reports of violence that left at least one person dead. Bouteflika, president since 1999, traveled to Switzerland late Sunday for what his office called routine medical checks. Bouteflika has been largely confined to a wheelchair and rarely seen in public since a serious stroke in 2013. While scores of people are believed dead after a pipeline explosion in southern Nigeria, according to local officials, the Associated Press reported on Saturday that more than 50 people were missing a day after the early morning explosion of the Nembish Creek pipeline in Bayelsa State. Ateo Exploration Limited, the company that owns the pipeline, announced that the fire, which ignited about 4 a.m. local time Friday, was finally extinguished on Saturday with no loss of life. But a spokesman for the indigenous groups in the area, Chief Mnengi James Eriworio, contradicted that claim, saying the fire was still burning and many people, including children, were missing and there were feared dead. He called on the Nigerian government to respond and investigate the incident. Yet Nedbesh Negusi lost her sight at the age of 5, but she has not let her disability slow her down. A tireless advocate for people with disabilities in Africa, she has received prestigious prizes, including the Spirit of Helen Keller Award and the Alternative Nobel Prize. Yet Nedbesh Negusi recently spoke to VOA Salim Solomon from our studios in New York. Here's our story.
Growing up in the rural province of Wollo, Ethiopia, Nedbesh Negusi was thought to have little prospects for success in life after she became blind as a result of meningitis.
Becoming blind was like quite so many people meant for my mom that, oh my gosh, it's going to be end of her life. She can only live until you're alive.
But where others saw obstacles, she saw opportunity.
Had I not been blind, I would have been early married, like at the age of 10 or 12. So I always called that being blind was my emancipator. That way it gave me the path to education and brought me to where I am today.
While other young girls were married off as child brides or forced to work at home, she was allowed to devote herself to learning. She moved to the capital, Addis Ababa, and pursued education, eventually earning a law degree. She went on to form a group, the Ethiopian Center for Disability and Development, that advocates for the rights of the disabled in her home country. Yet Nedbesh isn't alone in the struggle for access. An estimated 15 million people in Ethiopia live with disabilities, and they are often stigmatized by society and have heightened risk of poverty. She says society assumes people with disabilities are unable to perform even the most basic tasks.
They really get amazed when you do something because the initial thinking that they have is because if you have a disability, they think that you're full of disabilities.
Yet Nabersh's organization, the Ethiopian Center, has sought to address these barriers through job training and publications. She also advocates for legal changes, including overturning a restriction that makes it illegal for deaf people in Ethiopia to drive.
It depends on how you view the person. Like, for example, if you see a person using a wheelchair, then if you say, oh, because he's using a wheelchair, he cannot be a doctor, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't have any relationships.
She also has a message for allies who want to help disabled people.
So that way people can help us to unlock our potentials, to become who we can be.
Salam Solomon, VOA News, Washington.
Well, in Tanzania, more and more women are entering technical professions that have traditionally been dominated by men. In this report, narrated by Esther Githu-Ewart, VOA Swahili's Edie Iwesu takes us to an Air Tanzania workshop in Dar es Salaam, where female engineers are at the top of their game.
Yeah, after starting, we can put battery off. In the battery, very, very, very expensive. People shoot us.
Nadhifa Hassan leads an all-female engineering crew responsible for Air Tanzania's Boeing 787 Dreamliner, a state-of-the-art aircraft getting its final checks before departure. Hassan says women should not be intimidated by the challenges of technical studies.
Engineering courses are not that difficult. People shouldn't be discouraged that engineering studies are really hard. No. Everything is about learning. And we work as a team. So if you're stuck somewhere, someone else will be there to help because we have double inspections.
Hassan's engineers completed many hours of training to qualify for the Dreamliner team and have succeeded, she says, through hard work, determination, and a focus on their jobs and their studies. Air Tanzania engineer Hawan Zota says women can be just as successful in technical professions as men.
This thing is not as masculine as it sounds. It can be done. So I encourage all the females out there to pursue this part of aviation as aircraft engineers.
Air Tanzania engineer Modesta Mwanjala says African women should dream big and not be discouraged by male colleagues who have traditionally dominated math, science, and engineering fields.
I would like to tell them that they should work hard, they should be confident that anything is possible if they put enough effort to attain their goals.
Tanzania's Board of Engineering says about 10% of its registered members are women. With Air Tanzania expanding its fleet, there will be more opportunities for female aircraft engineers to join the team. For Eid Uwesu in Dar es Salaam, I'm Esther Githu-Ewart in Washington.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, in Ethiopia, keeping lifestyle-related diseases in check. But first, a look at Monday's headlines. At least 22 people have been killed and many more injured after powerful tornadoes swept through the southern U.S. state of Alabama on Sunday. Local authorities said at least 2 tornadoes touched down during an outbreak of severe weather across the southeast. A spokesman for the Lee County Emergency Management Agency said about 150 first responders searched through debris after the powerful storms hit. She said numerous homes were destroyed or damaged in Beauregard, about 95 kilometers east of Montgomery, the state capital. The National Weather Services had issued numerous tornado warnings for Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina as severe weather swept across the region on Sunday. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey declared a state of emergency to provide state resources to the damaged areas. President Donald Trump's national emergency declaration for border wall construction could receive its second rebuke from Congress when the Senate votes on a resolution of disapproval. The measure already passed in the House of Representatives and faces a certain presidential veto if it clears the Senate. VOA's Michael Bowman has our report.
A president determined to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border.
We are being invaded. We're being invaded by drugs, by people, by criminals, and we have to stop it.
Appears likely to be dealt a formal bipartisan rejection by the Senate.
There is no actual national security emergency at our southern border.
We must defend Congress's institutional powers as the founders hoped we would.
Congress has approved only a small fraction of the funds Trump requested to erect physical border barriers. By declaring a national emergency, the president aims to circumvent Congress and redirect billions of dollars, mostly from military accounts, to border wall construction. Some Republican lawmakers wholeheartedly back the move.
What we see happening along the border, the amount of drugs, the amount of deaths in America, the human trafficking that's coming across, the overwhelming problem there. So the president has the authority to do it.
But for Democrats and some Republicans, Trump's emergency declaration flies in the face of the U.S. Constitution and would set a dangerous precedent.
It would be a large step away from democracy and towards autocracy. We do not want a president, no American, to be able to just do things by decree and get around Congress.
The president's emergency declaration is ill-advised precisely because it attempts to shortcut the process of checks and balances by usurping Congress's authority. This resolution blocks that overreach.
Trump recently mocked such concerns.
The good people, they're friends of mine, we're very concerned with setting precedent. I'm very concerned with having murderers and drug traffickers and drugs and drug cartels pouring into our country.
The Senate has until the middle of the month to vote on the resolution of disapproval. Trump is sure to veto if it passes. Ultimately, it may be up to the federal courts to determine the fate of the national emergency declaration. Among the factors courts may weigh, the will of Congress, first in declining to approve border wall funding, and then in attempting to block the president's action. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
The chairman of the U.S. House Judiciary Committee plans to issue requests for documents Monday to 60 people, including officials at the White House and Justice Department, as part of a step-up investigations of President Donald Trump and his connections to Russia during the 2016 presidential campaign. Representative Gerald Nadler told ABC News the committee wants to see documents from Trump's oldest son, Donald Trump Jr., and Alan Weisselberg, the chief financial officer of the Trump Organization and the president's global business empire.
Crimes and impeachable offenses are two different things. There can be crimes that are not impeachable offenses and impeachable offenses that are not crimes. They're just two different tests. But we have to lay out for the American people, and we can't depend on the Mueller investigation for this. The Mueller investigation, number one, we don't know when it's ending, despite lots of rumors. Number two, it's focused on specific crimes, and we have to focus much more broadly.
Well, Netherlands committee and other congressional panels are awaiting release of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report on his 22-month investigation of Trump campaign links to Russia, and whether Trump, as president, obstructed justice by trying to thwart the investigation. Netherlands says he believes Trump's former longtime personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, has directly implicated the president in various crimes, both during his presidential campaign and while he has been president. Cohen showed the House Oversight Committee 2 large checks last week, one signed by the president, and one signed by the younger Trump and Weaselberg, to partly reimburse Cohen for $130,000 he paid shortly before the 2016 election to adult film star Stormy Daniels as hush money to keep her quiet about an alleged affair. Now, Daniels claims she had an affair with the real estate mogul more than a decade ago. Cohen has been sentenced to prison for 3 years after pleading guilty to financial crimes and to lying to Congress. The Trump's Russian business overtures ended in January 2016 at the outset of the presidential campaign. Well, with the U.S. and China still negotiating a trade deal and ongoing concerns in the U.S. about China's technology goals, Silicon Valley is caught between 2 superpowers. Michelle Quinn reports.
They call it the Trump effect. Increased government scrutiny of Chinese investments in Silicon Valley has meant some deals are not getting done. Some aren't even considered. Startups are even declining Chinese investment. After years of growing ties between China and Silicon Valley, the U.S. tech capital is caught between Beijing and Washington in the competition to create the next generation of communication technologies.
China's innovation efforts are broad and deep. China wants to be a global innovation leader and is doing all that it can, legally and illegally, to achieve its goals.
The U.S. says those methods include massive cyber hacking campaigns to steal corporate secrets, forced technology transfers to Chinese partners, and government policies that reward intellectual property theft. One Asia observer outlines the view of China's strongest critics.
China is out to conquer the world through its AI. China tech equals export of authoritarianism.
But he says Silicon Valley has a lot to lose if the U.S. makes it harder to do business with Chinese investors and companies.
By not working with China in some ways, not only do we not have less access to information about what they're doing, but they will simply substitute us for more reliable partners, and then we'll be cut out of the entire market.
The U.S. government wants new barriers up because it believes some technologies, such as artificial intelligence and robotics, are important to national security. But many in the tech industry see risk in new restrictions.
I think we should be open and sharing, and both countries benefit so much by having a very open communication lane there. I believe we have a problem that we're putting up barriers where we don't really, they don't benefit us.
Chinese companies are already racing to build 5G wireless communication networks around the world, which the U.S. says risks giving Beijing enormous opportunities for electronic surveillance. The stakes make it hard to predict how the U.S. and China will come to an understanding.
When you have a conversation where one party sees China as an emerging national security challenge and the other sees it as an emerging business opportunity, that's just a fundamental clash of cultures and expectations that is difficult to reconcile, but I also think not impossible.
While Washington wants to make sure the U.S. wins the technology race, Silicon Valley worries its culture of open communication is at stake. Michelle Quinn, VOA News, San Francisco.
Artists James Terrell and Zudaika Zinga Terrell have been on a long quest to explore their identity and express it in their artworks. Now, the artists are both descendants of Africans who were brought to America and sold as slaves. Faiza Al-Masri visited the Center for the Arts in Manassas, Virginia, to see the artist's latest exhibit, Born on the Bottom of the Ship. Faith Lapidus narrates.
Since early childhood, the questions, who am I and where did I come from, puzzled artist James Terrell and his wife, Sudeka Nzinga Terrell.
The white kids were able to get up and talk about hundreds of years of their background and where they come from and who they are. And it was me and one other black kid in the class who could go back to a plantation in Virginia, and that's it.
That's the inspiration behind the exhibit.
My people were brought here on the bottom of a ship, and they were sold and they were renamed.
Disconnected from their original identity, over the years, Africans became African Americans with a new culture, and her art reflects that.
You'll see a lot of things that remind people of like African prints and African textiles, but you'll also see things that are reminiscent of American culture and American print and textile.
Hope and Grace showcases Nzinga Terrell's style with linear patterns of fabric stitching and touches of realism. James Terrell's style reflected in Mamiwata. The first piece visitors see when they enter the exhibit is more abstract. The black and white colors symbolize the era of slavery when Africans were brought to America in chains.
The lines are to symbolize the fact that people say that our race has been broken, but I say that we've been put back together and we're stronger as a people. The different colors represent the fact that we come from different backgrounds, but yet we all come together and we're still together to form a particular person or a particular feeling.
That gives their work a universal message.
A lot of us in America, you know, immigration is part of a lot of families' history and stories. So I do think it's a relevant theme. It's a universal theme. I don't think it just relates to the African American community.
When I first walked in, the colors and the shapes hit me first because I'm a mathematician and I love the geometry of the shapes and how they all fit together.
As soon as I walked in the main door, I was just, it was an awe experience. But when the lights were turned to blue, it was a whole different experience. Everything popped. You saw colors that you didn't even really recognize during the actual natural lighting.
The artists hope to take their exhibit on tour across America and around the world. For writer Faiza El-Masri in Manassas, Virginia, Faith Lapidus, VOA News.
Well, a new dance style born in Chicago is recognized around the world. It's called hip-play and combines hip-hop and ballet. Xenia Turkova traveled to Chicago to meet the godfather of hip-play, Homer Hans Bryant.
This dance style is called hip-play, a combination of hip-hop and ballet, or hip-hop and pointe. It was born in Chicago and created by Homer Hans Bryant, who used to be a dancer himself.
I decided to make it fun. So I used to do what I call the rap ballet. I would rap about ballet. I would say, the ballet put your body in touch, put your mind, and the rap beat keeps you stepping on time. And I kept thinking hip-hop and ballet, ballet, hip-hop, hip-play.
Bryant says he dreamed of making ballet more accessible to African American and other minority families. So he tested his hybrid dancing style, and it proved to be a gleaming success. Hip-play became so popular it took off on YouTube. Videos of Bryant's students dancing got millions of views. Thousands reached out to Bryant to sign up for classes.
I don't care your shape or size. And that's another thing about classical ballet. You really have to be this thin, anorexic looking, you know, long neck, skinny arms, be able to, that's not how it is with the hip-play ballerinas.
Hip-play ballerina Lourdes Taylor has been in love with dancing for over 16 years, since she was 3 years old. She says during the summer she spends at least 40 hours a week practicing hip-play. Taylor likens the new dance style to a spectacular chemical experiment when mixing elements leads to an unexpected and amazing reaction.
I think what's really special about hip-play to me is that it combines classical ballet, which is a predominantly, well, European-based dance form and is predominantly white now, with something that is traditionally African-American.
Another original American art form that combines the gifts and talents of a diverse group to create something beautiful. Xenia Turkova for VOA News, Chicago.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Every Sunday, hundreds of residents turn out for a morning walkout session in Addis Ababa. Abdeltefa Moussein started the program in 2003 after noticing that people wanted to join in whenever he and his friends were working out. The World Health Organization has warned that lifestyle-related diseases are on the rise in Africa because of sedentary lifestyle, tobacco use, physical inactivity, harmful use of alcohol, and unhealthy diet. Moussein sessions include cardio training and toning through simple aerobics routines. Medical experts warn that high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and obesity could soon reach epidemic levels in some parts of Africa. Well, next up, locals in the Seychelles are taking a stand against plastic pollution, organizing beach cleaning ups and banning plastic straws in hotels and restaurants. Plastic waste isn't just threatening tourist hotspots. Mounds of waste are washing onto the shores of an isolated UNESCO World Heritage Site, threatening its endangered wildlife. Zara Padiwala founded the Ocean Project in November 2016. Since then, she's organized beach cleanups across several Seychelles islands, preventing hundreds of tons of plastic waste potentially reaching the ocean. From bags to bottles, some 13 million tons of plastic flows into our oceans every year, according to a 2018 UN report. It's claimed that if the present trend continues, our ocean could contain more plastic than fish by 2050. Well, and finally, South African-born billionaire and entrepreneur Elon Musk has made history again. A SpaceX unmanned crew capsule successfully docked at the International Space Station on Sunday in a key milestone for Elon Musk's space company and NASA's long-delayed goal to resume human spaceflight from U.S. soil later this year. NASA has awarded SpaceX and Boeing $6.8 billion to launch astronauts into orbit from American soil for the first time since the U.S. Space Shuttle was retired from service in 2011. Either SpaceX or Boeing will be the first private company to launch humans into space on its own rocket, although plans for the rockets built by both companies to carry astronauts into space. And that's what's trending today. Well, and that's our show for today. Now, be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com for more news. Tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings, Today Break Africa, between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.